Hello, YouTube, and welcome to the Gunpla Network in our discussion on 86, or the 86, or 8686, however you want to say it, the hot new mecha anime that's out. I'm here with Mr. Murdoch, and we're going to be talking about it.
Hi.
So we've both finished the full series. The final 2 episodes were delayed, and it's been a couple weeks, so we've had time to sit and think with it and kind of feel out what we think. So we're going to start with just talking about Season 1 encapsulated by itself, Season 2 by itself, and then kind of overall how the whole series feels. But Murdoch, what did you feel about the first season?
The first season was, well, quite frankly, it was rough. Like, from an emotional standpoint. Not that it wasn't well written. It was very well written and very well executed, but it was rough.
Yeah, it was very... There were some emotional moments in it, and it just feels like the show's constantly kind of kicking you, just because the character deaths are kind of all over the place.
Well, yeah, like at least one person dies every episode. Just about. It's oof.
Yeah, that it's real. Like, I can't think of a direct Gundam comparison, but like Victory Gundam's probably the closest in terms
Victory, or even like Zeta, because every death in Zeta hit you.
Yeah, and that's something that I feel like I'm either being devil's advocate-y or it's just kind of not hit me yet, maybe. But I did feel like at least the first half of the first season, where they're kind of trying to whittle through the cast, a lot of it just kind of felt rushed. And I think maybe the novel does that better because it doesn't have like episode limits and things like that. But like the last kind of grouping we see before the final 5, there are some of those deaths really hit. They're like Gundam level, like, oh, this is Camille's mom dying or something. But yeah, a lot of the first ones didn't give me that same vibe. Kind of maybe Camille's dad dying because Camille's dad kind of sucked anyway.
I personally would wager to say closer to like Appley. Because Appley was like, oh no, that actually really sucks. Ugh. Or Roberto. Appley and Roberto, those deaths were... Roberto's was pretty early on, but that was like, oh man.
Yeah, those are like the kind of like final grouping, like the kind of last major battle before they head out kind of deaths.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, we actually had time with these people. That kind of sucked because we at least knew them a little.
Mm-hmm.
We still didn't get like a ton of time with them, but I do think that it was the smart move. Had they spent like a whole 24 episodes on just this arc, it would have felt really slow. And I don't think there's a lot of extra character development you could have done for some of those characters, but it does kind of make me curious about the novel and if it handles that slightly better. But I've heard a lot of people say the novel and the adaptation are very close, so I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, in that point too, right? Like, this is a war of attrition. Like, this is basically prototype miniature Zoids meets Terminator 2 and add in some flavor of the Matrix, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
If
it's
my
a good combination of those.
If my references make sense, for those of you who are, under the age of 30 in the crowd, I'm sure I probably said a bunch of things that are kind of confusing.
So to kind of zoomer this, or not zoomer, but like
yeah, zoomer it. Let's not pretend.
Zoomer it. I'm trying to think of like what. It's a Black Mirror episode, basically. I guess it's the closest thing I can think of. It's been a while since we've had a good Terminator movie, so people may be like, what is Terminator? I would hope most people know what Terminator is, though.
Well, I won't mention Genesis then.
Yeah, we kind of forget some of the newer ones exist, because, we just don't talk about them.
Hey, James
like
Cameron.
G-Savior.
James Cameron does what James Cameron does because James Cameron is James Cameron.
Pretty much. They just, write him a blank check and just kind of wait. And he'll do whatever he decides to, whether good or bad.
Oh dear.
But yeah, I mean, one thing I will say that's really kind of the only problem I had with the first season was like, it is real. There's no moment where you have hope for the most part. Like, even the end that's kind of played up a little more hopeful until like the final kind of twist, if you will.
Yep.
It just like it's constantly kicking you like, oh hey, by the way, this person died, or hey, this is a really hopeless fight, or blank blank blank, insert sadness.
Or
and,
hey,
that makes sense for what it is, but like
Yep.
kind of parallel like the the mess team, it never feels like that. Like there's a lot of tension, but it never feels kind of the same way.
That's again right, because comparing it to Gundam in the 1 Year War, the attrition is absolutely there, but it's people, right? At the end of the day, the 1 Year War, even with the case of the 8th MS team, like, it's still people, whereas you're dealing with people versus soulless machines bent on exterminating the human race, and they don't know if any other countries even survived, right?
That is true. So I wonder if, I mean, they do mention like the little like blue bird looking robots jam signals and stuff.
Yeah, they do.
And like, not to skip ahead, but they do like, it is curious that the other nations by the time we get to season 2 have connected communication. And
well,
I mean, that's like,
it's
I said, we're
limited.
getting ahead of ourselves, but
Yeah.
it is interesting. But yeah, and San Magnolia is also, it in and of itself, a strange thing, because we don't like, we do have some historical things we could tie to. A lot of people, of course, World War II.
Big time World War II.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird the way it, and no one's really brought this up, because I think just the idea is just, oh, the whole like racism commentary, if you will, is really heavy-handed in the first season, because it's setting up what it is.
Well,
But
you could compare that to World War II Germany, or you could even compare that to like 60s Cambodia.
true.
Not a reference I use lightly either, but it's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, it is in this way, like, because there's two parts of it, I think, and I think this is something that would have benefited the show, and I assume it's talked about in the books because it's brought up on the wiki, is we never get to see kind of this process take place. We're just kind of dropped into it. The 86 are outside, and the only experience we get from the 86 point of view is Spearhead Squadron. So we never actually see what the rest of the 86 live like. Like, of course, it's the 86 district, and we assume it's in a pretty bad state.
Well,
but they talk about on the wiki, which I assume is pulled from the novel, the whole process of how the 86 are shoved to the 86 district, and they talk about it a little bit in the show, but we never see that. And I think that's probably why it kind of feels heavy-handed, because if it had some explanation, I don't think it would have felt as much. Like, if we had gotten that reference point, I mean, it's still heavy-handed, but we would have gotten to see it and be like, oh, this is actually like not just them telling us, they're showing us how bad this is, not being like, oh, the 86 have no rights, they're not humans, they're just shoved out here with machines, mostly on their own, with like next to no supervision.
Well, I mean, as far as that goes too, right? Like, we don't get like obvious full frontal exposition, right? We get little snippets, we get environmental storytelling on that, and those hints are there. Mostly it's in the passing conversations between the 86 that we do get exposed to, but also they do swap around photos that you see every once in a while from when they were growing up, and some of them it's pictures from those, basically, because the 86th district at this point is basically just an internment camp.
Mm-hmm.
And like, who wants to be in an internment camp?
Yeah. It just like I mean, I think it's maybe a Western point of view thing too, is like all of our media that depicts like those kind of events is like you get a shot almost all the time, like a very dedicated shot in any movie or TV series, even if it doesn't take place in, say, the ghettos or the internment camps, you they make sure you see it. So it's kind of something I feel like I'm ingrained to expect, but also not something that like I can think of a lot of like anime that have ever covered a similar topic and showed this. So it maybe it's a difference in how media is made or kind of the thought process of writing this goes. But like I said, I think this would probably appear in the novel because I don't know where else it would come from if it's on the wiki. And it makes sense. They like go into the whole reason why the 86 are soldiers basically that the Sam Magnolia is like, hey, you'll get your citizenship if you're a soldier, full knowing that they'll never actually become a citizen and they're not coming back. But I actually did think that was a pretty strong ending of just like send them out into the wild, kind of actually give them their freedom, if you will, in a really bleak way.
That's
But it's like the
yeah.
only time we're shown anything vaguely hopeful at the same time. Like you get to see these wide open, sprawling landscapes and everything's just kind of like, oh, cool, they're going camping, full well knowing that's not what it is.
Yeah, like, yeah, no, we're heading out to die, but we're gonna live life to the fullest until it happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's there's I have so many mixed feelings about that. But again, that's because, we're watching this as mostly well-adjusted adults. We
Yeah.
know this is wrong.
Yeah. And it is like it's an interesting disparity because it does set up like kind of the tonal shift for season 2 when it gets there, but it is kind of interesting getting to see like all these abandoned places and kind of this weird solitude to it. It doesn't feel necessarily creepy or like even abandoned to a certain extent. Like it is abandoned obviously, but it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like humanity's entirely left there. Like there's something to it in the way they show it, the music, the lighting and everything. And it never feels like the Legion's impending on that. And it kind of is because it's like we do see it later, but
Yeah, but again, these are like how to describe it. It's like any ruins of a town you'd find. Like again, World War One and Two are a good example
mm,
where these kind of tiny towns existed.
yeah, it is something. And I think that just this like concept of abandoned things, I think just in general, like IRL does make like it's always a creepy thing. It's never like kind of treated the same way. Because like I said, the endings that kind of that weird hopeful uptick, full well knowing it's like this is still terribly messed up.
Well,
But this is like the only instance where we get like loads of sunlight, lots of sprawling landscapes. That even in the zoo, where they encounter like the broken down Legion machine, it's still like, oh, well, maybe things will be okay for us. We don't know. But it is an interesting series because it just like kicks you and stomps you from episode 1. It's like, hey, maybe it's okay, but it's not. And then at the
especially
very end, it is.
especially when you have the sympathizer Alba that is Vladilena and her making her big naive stand, right? Like, and they ridicule her for it throughout the entire show so far from what we've seen. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to touch on that now or later, but
Yeah, I mean, because we see it, I think, most, at least in terms of quantity, in season 1, right?
well,
Because
yeah,
all the other military Alba, except for like her uncle, are just getting drunk and not doing anything.
yep.
Which kind of begs the question: like, is anyone else actually being an operator, or is it just Lena just kind of coming in every day, like, all right, back to this?
Well,
Uh,
basically, like only Lena and her uncle seem to be taking their jobs actually seriously, and Lena, according to literally everyone else she works with, takes her job way too seriously.
Yeah, and it is like her kind of arc is really interesting in the first season because we don't see her a ton in the second, unfortunately.
Well, there's reasons for that, but that's okay. We'll get to those when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I mean, there's that one because it is very, especially when anything's brought up from her point of view. It's this very like you see her trying really hard, and then like halfway through, or maybe not even halfway, I think it's Theo is like, "You don't
Yep.
even think we have names?" And like kind of berates her a little bit. And it is kind of that like, "Oh yeah, her culture kind of just never makes you think about that,"
Yep.
and she didn't either. So you do kind of get to see her deal with that because that's like a 1 or 2 episode thing of her like
Oh,
trying to handle just that specific instance.
but it wasn't just that though. It was another girl too. After that, because she wanted to get to know the entire squad, right? So it was Theo basically did that, and then of course it's one of the characters that you get to have that emotional attachment to, only for them to die 3 episodes later. I forget her name already, but she basically is like, "Look, I will never like you people, but I can appreciate the effort you're trying to make."
Yeah, and it like not to like I said, not to skip ahead again because we'll talk about it more at length in a minute, but like you get to see kind of the reverse of that, or like the general Alba kind of mindset by the time like the second season comes around and ends.
Oh yeah.
And it's still like Lena's effectively Lena and her scientist friend are like the only two that are like, yeah, we kind of like the 86, and everyone else is like, they saved us, but we still don't like them.
Yeah.
Like,
Meanwhile, Lena's the only effective battlefield commander out of everybody there. So,
yeah, and that like I don't think I understood this because I think I remember I think I watched part of it in sub, then I watched part of it in dub, then I watched the second season mostly in dub, and then the end in the sub. So I'm a little confused on some things, I think. But at some point, don't they say that like all the other 85 districts are like enclosed by a wall or something?
yes, they're all walled. And the Grand Mur, sorry, I'm butchering it both in French and English, literally translates from French to the Great Wall.
So like we'll talk about it more in a minute. But okay, there is a wall, like a physical, actual
Yes.
big wall.
And that basically is the last major physical line of defense around the other 85 districts or the Alba, so that they have their almost Attack on Titan level complacency
Yeah, so
to the outside
like,
world.
we're behind a wall, we're fine, and they're not fine.
Not at all.
But yeah, I mean, overall, season 1 I think did get a good job of hyping people into the second, and I think the second carries that really well. So overall, first season pretty solid. I feel like I said there are some story things that I particularly was like, it could be better. But like the whole series overall, and I'll elaborate on this more visually and audio, like soundtrack and everything is just stellar. It's a like really solid show, and for Mecha not having a lot of stuff lately, it's one of the better ones out right now.
Totally. In fact, I'd say the second season was probably the best anime of last year. Fight me.
I think there are a lot of options out there, but and as far as mecha, I would probably say you're pretty much spot on because I don't think there's a lot of other mecha last year that I can remember.
Well, even isekai, like there was a couple of good isekai too. Like the assassin reincarnated as an aristocrat. That was like a close second, but the 86 are tippy top of that pack still.
Yeah, because the only other like mecha show I can think of from last year was the first season, or first part of Kyokai Senki.
Yeah.
Kyokai Senki.
Yeah.
And 86 is much better than that. I would say, I don't think anyone's gonna be upset by this, but Kyokai Senki, well, it's good. It's pretty mid. It's okay. It's middling. It's not.
It's finding its footing.
Yeah, it's not knocking it out of the park yet, but I have to catch up to it. But uh, it feels like very, oh cool, Sunrise made a mecha show. It's not gonna be the 10 out of 10, but it's gonna be like a solid 6 or 7, probably, maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But the second season of 86, yeah, the second season of 86 is I don't want to give a number to it because I'm still, I think, probably on the lesser of the anime of the year side of that, but it carries everything from season 1 and just makes everything better. Which is kind of weird because we see Lena way less.
I mean, the focus had to be taken away from Lena because, right, San Magnolia was no longer, the focus of attention. Yeah. So, okay, San Magnolia is not something that our survivors want to think about at the moment, and at this point, they've got a new lease on life. So they spend, that first 3 months just trying to be kids again. And we see how that goes.
I found it very interesting that Raiden's the only one that actually goes and gets a job. Like everyone else just goes and hangs out and takes cooking class or goes shopping or goes to the library, but he's just like, I'm a mover.
But they're doing things though, right? They're trying to find some normalcy, and you see this in real life too, right? Back in World War II, or after World War II ended rather, and even through today, right? There's lots of veterans programs that basically give people the opportunity to have their minds focus on learning a new skill and just becoming reintegrated with society and having an opportunity to not have to go back and make more war or keep their minds off of what they experienced until they're ready to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like an interesting, I don't think they would have shown us because that doesn't really.
Those teenagers weren't going to talk. Just the mindset from what I've seen of them. They weren't going to say a thing to anybody. It would have, even if they had a proper therapist, the therapist would have been
that scene would have really went very well.
The therapist would have been like, you know what? Come back when you're actually ready to talk, and let's not waste anybody's time. Is honestly how that conversation would have gone.
Yeah, I mean, they're you do get to see them try and then get very bored or disaffected with that whole period and decide, okay, yeah, we want to go back out. The fight's not done. We need to do the Legion stuff. And Shin still has the whole thing he's got to do. But
Shine's carrying so much on his shoulders. There is a burden that he has chosen to take. And we even see this glimpses of it without understanding what's going on by the end of the first episode of the first season. This is important, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, they do a really good job, especially in the first few episodes of the first season, really cementing who Shin is and what he's doing. And they do a very good job of show not tell. They don't really explain that, especially in those episodes, what Shin's doing for what reason, but you see it and you're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. This is, especially when you kind of start to figure out, oh, the Legion's taking brains. So he's no brains for you, Legion.
Yep. And
just interesting.
You know what else I noticed? The 86 don't get dog tags.
Yeah, I guess they don't. We don't ever see that because he always takes the side, and I guess
it makes
more sense to do that if there's no. Yeah.
Because if he had dog tags, he'd just have a freaking battle box full of dog tags.
Yeah, I guess the Republic was like, no, we're not gonna do that. I mean, if they're like, you don't have names, they're like, yeah, you're not gonna get dog tags.
Well, they're not people.
Yeah, so they're like, yeah, there's no need to identify you, even as a part, which is a whole nother level of oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because you can, of course they don't ever talk about it, but you can guarantee almost every important part of a Juggernaut is serial.
Oh, number. Of course. Serialized kit, totally.
Yeah, so it's just like, oh, there's like one thing in that whole thing that doesn't get that. But it is, I mean, I guess there's not really instances where they die outside of the Juggernaut. Like the Juggernaut's usually destroyed in the same instance or around it. So
Well,
that's not really justifying, but still, I guess that's maybe their thought process. Like maybe.
well, think about it in Gundam terms, right? These things are basically ball pods with legs. Very fast ball
Yeah.
pods with legs, but ball pods with legs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it takes someone very adept piloting these to be effective at all, which is interesting. That I mean, I think see it in the second season. I don't know that they mention it as much. I guess they do in the first, but what little bits of Lena we do get up until the ending, she's doing like more, like not only researching maps and stuff like she did in the first, but kind of going around her uncle's authority and getting artillery strikes and
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
which
she's a good
also,
boss.
yeah, like she's going out there. It also like if you didn't like if you had that capability, like even if you're not trying to do it to help the 86, like you would think that would be kind of like, oh, this would stop the Legion pretty effectively comparatively.
You're
So maybe
talking
just do it.
no, you're talking about an incompetent military. Not possible.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, because we see the Federacy in the second season utilize like combined arms and everything much better.
Yes. See,
Because they're like an actual functional military.
the Confederacy is actually effective, and they are competent, and they do care, and they do treat their soldiers like people.
Yeah, and I think the second season definitely alleviates like the minor issue I had with the first, where I was like, hey, we don't get to know a lot of these people, but you get to know Eugene over like 2 or 3 episodes.
And his sister.
Yeah, and they drag that out. They like the
Oh
whole sister
God.
thing is the whole rest of the season, like in little bits. It's not like the
Yeah.
whole main point,
And
but
and that stupid redheaded rival who's got a bone to pick with Shin because he doesn't know anything.
yeah, that dude kind of just feels like a waste at that situation. But I guess they were like,
No,
someone needs to facilitate this like 8-year-old sending these letters to military personnel or something.
no. See, there's more to it than that. Like that is the way he acted, like a total jackass at the beginning, especially after the whole incident where Shin literally flipped that fat ass spider tank to avoid Dipstick trying to be a hotshot, and of course everybody's flipping out and wanting to discipline Shin over that. And it's like, look, man, I saved 2 tanks, and all you have to do is fix the legs on one of them. But anyway, I'm getting off topic of what I wanted to talk about here. In terms of that dude and his attitude and how he was acting, that is very real. And you see the shift in his attitude and just his overall demeanor towards Shin after that mission and after he finally does put Eugene down. Not right away, but after, things have calmed down and that explanation, the official one that they've decided to debrief the Confederacy troops with, whatever that ends up being, we don't see that on screen. You see the attitude change. And
Yeah,
it's no longer a you're a jerk and you killed my friend. It's, oh, I'm sorry. It was an ass.
yeah, and it like it's good that takes a while too, like because you kind of forget that guy exists for a while
Yep.
until he shows back up, and you're like, oh yeah, this guy was a dude. He existed.
And then you realize he had character growth.
Yeah, just off screen, and you're like, oh, huh. You exist somewhere in time and space in this universe.
And you didn't die.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. It's kind of amazing he's still around, but all right, dude, you do you, buddy. Congratulations. But it is like I think that it one of the things I think that the second season improves from the to the first. It actually improves part of the first is
Yep.
there's a lot of stuff the first sets up for this effectively, and it really has this really stark contrast of like, oh, the Republic goes so far as to like not even consider you people, but we're like, hey, we're gonna like have these support groups and stuff that you'll see like in little snippets and stuff,
Yeah.
but people are still scared of you, and it's like this really subtle like some people are generally here to help you, other people are trying to use you, and other people are like, you exist, I guess.
Yep.
But it is like a really good development on that.
Like even the end of season 2 when we actually see pardon me, we see the basically the battered people in San Magnolia getting help from the Confederacy. And you see the old just bigot Alba freaking going, "Hey, how come he got more food? Damned 86." And then freaking everybody just glares at him and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah, it's
Like instant guilt.
yeah, like it is interesting to see how that all plays out and how they're in this weird position where most of the 80s or most of the Alba are probably still pretty discriminatory in this way, but
Oh
they don't
yeah,
really
big
have much of a
time.
choice because, like, oh, we don't get to eat if we're gonna hold to our ridiculous principle, I guess, in that way.
Yeah, meanwhile,
Um,
you've got the Confederates who are literally multicultural pals, for lack of better terms.
yeah, it is like the Confederacy is just like, yeah, whatever, you're you, we don't care. We're
So
trying to fight
much.
the hive mind of brains, and that
The
that is something
Borg.
like pretty much, yeah. They'll assimilate everything. That's literally what they're trying to do. But it is like the one thing I kind of wasn't as big of a fan on in season 2, and pretty much everything from season 2 improves upon season 1, or is at least to the same level. Like
Yep.
animation wise, I don't know. It did get a little better, but
Oh, they
it
got a
was
budget
already
increase.
yeah, like it already looked really good. So it's like, oh, you gotta get some of those like extra little transition portions or extra animation.
Oh, come on.
But you see some,
The final battle with the Morpho was just gratuitous.
yeah, like I imagine a lot of that extra budget went to that specifically. I mean, because it is, I think that's probably why those last 2 episodes kind of got delayed. Is they were like, we really want to make this real notable, and it like I said, the soundtrack, the visuals, everything is, like I said, at least on par, if not better than it was in season 1, by a noticeable degree. But the one thing I disliked, and it's not really even a big deal, but it does feel a little. It exists in season 1, but it doesn't get necessarily a big explanation. It gets explained in season 2, and I feel like the explanation's kind of dumb. Is the whole like Nozen clan having this
Oh yeah, that
power, which it's fine that Shin has the power. You could like, there's a lot of things that they kind of vaguely attribute it to maybe in season 1. That's like, oh yeah, sure, but then it's like, oh, it's because his family. And then like you see Frederica have a similar type power because she's of privileged birth or nobility or whatever.
yeah. Well, it's something different, but yeah, I feel you.
And like I think it's just that it's like the clan thing. Like had they just been like, we don't know, I've been cool with that. I've been like, great, awesome, because like the only other 2 people we know from your clan are never mentioned to have any abilities. I think the brother is at one point, but it's kind of very vaguely alluded to in the weird experiment thing, and
Well,
it's like, eh.
well, no, see, right, and so spoiler alert, we actually tried to do this once before, and just technical difficulties. So
Yeah.
this is actually round 2 for us. So they do cover it, and part of it is yes, Shin's family. For whatever reason, Shin, and I want to say the brother's name was Sho. I think it was Sho.
Something like that.
Either way, bigger, older, red-haired brother. We'll call him Ani-san just to keep everybody happy. Basically, they were observed to be, something whatever special. So the para raids and the raid system came from, at the time, what was considered at least relatively ethical experimentation to figure out how it worked. And that part, I don't think so much was the clan power. The clan power we end up seeing is the weird notable stuff afterwards. And yes, I totally agree. It's ill defined. It may as well be space magic.
Yeah, like it, and I
But
feel like this is something that like Gundam and Code Geass by extension have done better.
it's
Is
plot, right? It's plot armor in a slightly more balanced way, maybe.
to an
Eh,
extent, because the thing that like being ill-defined, I think is fine for like Gundam because new types almost consistently change in terms of like definitions and
oh,
possibilities and stuff.
and that's just within UC, by the way.
Yeah, that's not even counting X or any of the other alternative universe power people. But it is something that like it's vague enough that's like, oh, there's a better pilot, and it doesn't really need to be like, oh, any reason. Like, sure, they sense things, but whether it's precognition or some emotional thing or something, it kind of varies. But
Yeah, it's
with
basically
this,
ESP.
yeah, with this, it like almost seems like he's got this thing. He can definitely hear the Legion, but it's this weird thing where it's not ESP. He's not really like seeing the
No,
future. He's just hearing a bunch of dead brains, basically,
he's
which
hearing
is
the brain waves.
yeah, and it's like almost the attempt to try to explain it ungratifies it. Like just being like, oh, cool, he's kind of got powers, whatever, that's fine. Because I like that's the thing in any other instance, whether I guess maybe to not the same extent Code Geass, but Gundam in kind of the same way is it's not biological, basically, or
Yeah.
it's not.
Well, it's not not natural in the sense that we would think it would be anyway.
Yeah, like it's not a lineage thing. It doesn't come from your parents. It's not genetic. That's the word I was looking for.
Well, it
I guess
actually
it is
might.
genetic, but yeah.
Yeah, well, but like in the case of the pararays, right? Like, at least that's kind of defined sci-fi tech assisted telepathy.
Yeah, that like had they just left it that oh yeah, Shin can hear this and maybe Shin's brother as well at some point. And then Frederica has her own weird power thing. It's like cool, people have powers, but it's like oh, the Nosing clan are great
Yeah,
fighters and know things and have abilities and
space
like,
magic.
yeah, and it's like the prominent area of the Nosing clan was like the Empire before the Federacy. And the one dude that you knew that was of the Nosing clan didn't have abilities. He was just a bit
Angry.
like, yeah, he's just mad. So it's like,
He had to compensate.
okay. Yeah, he's like, I have to be extra mad because I don't have powers. But it, I mean, I think is just like, it's not a big thing. It doesn't really ruin anything. I think it maybe kind of muddles the power thing, but generally, it's really a nitpick. Is the end of the day. Like, it's the only thing I can think of from the second season. And I'm like, that's okay, I guess.
And you know what? It might even get better explained and defined in later seasons.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think that maybe it is that weird middle space of like, if they explain it more in season 3 and it is less of a clan thing, or maybe it's more of a clan thing and there's more people that have these abilities tied to some kind of lineage, it's like, oh, cool, okay, this is fine to an extent.
yep.
But it's just like, oh, Shin's like the only one other than Frederica that has a power, and her power is different and not really, I don't think, kind of the same thing. I mean, it's not obviously the same power, but I don't think it comes from like the same type of thing. But yeah, I mean, like everything was good. Frederica, probably, I'd say, I don't know, I'd say worst character, but
She's there
she,
to be the mascot, dude.
yeah, like
Like,
that's literally her one job, and she does it well. And it's like, cool, great, you're doing you, good job.
pretty much. Like, she wanted to be part of these misfits, right? Even though she had no real affiliation to them before the president bothered to take them in. Oh, yeah. So, spoilers if you haven't watched it yet. What we're talking about now, the president of the Confederacy basically took our surviving 5 of the 86 from Spearhead and adopted them on the spot.
Yeah, like it is an interesting like transition from season 1 to season 2. It is like, oh yeah, the president is very interested in you, and you have been adopted, and you have this mascot sister type person,
Oh
and
yeah,
just
by the
kind of
way, congratulations. You're citizens of the Confederacy now. It's like, oh,
yeah, do whatever you want. We don't care.
Also, you're going to a loving home. What?
Yeah, but it's the president's home, and he's going to be very adamant that you do things that, not even like a way of like a like stern father figure of just like go do anything for the love of God, like just get outside, go enjoy life.
Pretty much. Just please find something to do, and hopefully it's constructive.
Yeah. Which I guess maybe that's why Raiden's the only one that gets a job, because he's like, I just want to experience it. And everyone's
Yep.
like, I'm going to go shopping, or Theo's going to just go off by himself and draw some stuff.
Yeah.
Anju's going to cook things, and Shin's going to the library.
Oh yeah, and what was Kurena doing? Oh yeah, she was out shopping. She wanted a dress to feel pretty.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Kurena, because that's all that she's ever pictured doing outside, is just going shopping. And it's like,
I mean,
she has probably more to do than that, but I think they do establish at some point she's not a good cook, so
no.
fair.
Literally everyone else in the squad cooks better than she does. And we don't see Theo cooking ever.
Yeah. He just draws, and they're like, he's the drawing guy. That's all he does. He just draws. Just leave him alone.
Yep, he's the
Draws
artist.
stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is like overall, it uses the world around it really well in the second season that is at least alluded to in the first. So it does fill out the world a lot better, which I mean makes sense because it's set up. But like, there are a lot of shows that won't take advantage of that, and this really leans into it. Like, hey, there's other kingdoms that still exist, or countries, and they're kind of in the same terrible position we are, but you know, they exist. They're doing stuff.
And they're trying to reach out.
Yeah. Actually presenting a united front to an extent. Yeah, so I think that like overall the second season is very good, but it really pops off. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens in those final two, which makes sense they spaced them out. But like overall, for those last two episodes, what are your thoughts?
Well, those two episodes, those two final episodes for the season, they're also longer than the average episode, I will point out. I found it was an emotional roller coaster, honestly. Like, I won't even pretend to put on a tough front about it. It brought me to tears on more than one occasion. Like, just there's that much going on, and it's a lot of heavy, thoughtful, and powerful moments that are culminated in each of these episodes.
Yeah, it is like, in terms of like impactful moments, like they really shove a lot of them here, because that it's more, I'd say more in these last two episodes than maybe the first two seasons combined entirely. At least in terms of like actual, like, not say actual impact, but like the amount of impact they have overall. And just like you mentioned previously, like the final battle, visually speaking, is ridiculous. Like
that was budget intensive, absolutely.
Yeah, that's that's when the budget hits, right? That's the Tokyo Ghoul keyboard scene, which is much better used here, of course.
Or Konosuba hand scene.
Yeah. These at least had a point to them instead of just kind of like gratuitousness. But yeah, I mean the whole like blue robot flower field thing, which I mean it's still bird things, but still.
Yeah.
And then the like actual red flowers under them.
The poppies, yep.
Yeah, it's just like, it's beautiful. It's great. Like Tintin, like maybe some of the best animation of last year. Just, it's gorgeous.
Well,
I guess this year technically.
Even just the firing line, artillery fire barrage they were doing in like the campaign leading up to get to the Morpho to hit the Night Cousin there. That was just okay. That backfired. The animation was supposed to be, but you know, my lead motion doesn't want to play with me properly tonight. Apparently, but
it's hard to move in this space.
I am more than just a Muppet.
He's a digital Muppet.
At least I could jazz hands. I could jazz hands. Jazz hands. But anyway, where were we? Oh yes. But yes, in terms of the impact, especially when we finally get to the last episode where we are led to understand that old Spearhead is going to meet their old battlefield commander slash operator.
Yeah, I liked that they drug that out too. Like they really take almost that
Oh,
those 2 episodes to be like, no,
they
no, 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 not yet.
they edged the hell out of that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, Lena's definitely gonna recognize him by his voice, and then not, and it's like, what? And then it's like, oh, cool, they'll meet, and then it's like the last like couple of minutes of the final episode, and you're like,
Son of
wow,
a bitch.
you took this long to get here. Like it's still a really nice moment, but
But
wow.
all of the emotion was like the minutes before that, right? Because Shin brought his battle box with all of the carved names in it and set it down in front of the memorial. Had his 2 minutes of silence, left it there. And then we see 10 minutes later, through completely separate set of events, Lena finally coming. And she's got her little cute box of her little drawn faces of how she figured everybody looked. And she sets it beside it.
Yeah, like the way those scenes are mirrored is phenomenal.
Like, it's making me tear up thinking about it. Like, it's hard to describe.
yeah, I mean, it is when we say these 2 episodes are the most impactful. Like, there's almost not a scene in these last 2 episodes that doesn't have some impact to like a pretty large degree. I knew that one like really caps it off, and then of course you get kind of the happy ending where everyone's like, "Oh, it's us," and then she's like, "Oh, it's you."
It's like, and of course, instantly, as soon as they're done saluting and having their awkward professional moment, she just runs up to hug him.
Yeah, it really like as much as season 1 to season 2 vaguely set up like a good continuation. This one really is like, oh, season 3 is gonna be lit. Like it's gonna really kick off in season 3
Yep.
or season 2 part 1. However, whatever the next part is, that's
Yeah.
what's really gonna happen.
Yep. That being said, too, you can tell their dad, President. I want to say his name was Ernest. I forget
That sounds
already.
right.
But yeah, just basically their adopted dad's like boy meets girl moment. Because of course he's got all of the top secret briefings and notes and stuff because he's the freaking president. So he's got situational awareness of who these people are. And he already connected the dots like a while ago. And you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, he is probably the most excited about this moment. Like, I mean, once it happens, of course, everyone else is excited, but like, he is really going in on this. Like, he has to be there. He's got, I mean, I guess technically Fido's recording it, so it's not like he's walking around with a handy cam or something, but it's pretty much the same effect. It's like, oh, I can set everything up. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a really cool moment.
And he's
Fido's gonna
acting like a
record it.
dad.
Yeah, like this is I'm no longer the president. I'm your dad moment. It's phenomenal. Like it's just everyone is where they need to be in that final like moment, and it's really good and just such a. It ends on such a strong note.
It's very
really
well
up there.
written. Like everybody felt human. And that is hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like in a weird parallel, I guess, to an extent. As much as I like Code Geass, there are characters that disappear and then reappear and then disappear and then reappear that don't go nearly as much in terms of character development that like redheaded dude does off
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, like
It's really like everyone, even these weird side characters you barely know, feel human in the second season.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, like 10 on 10. Like it is really good. I think this is, and some people might get a little frustrated with this. I think this is the Gundam unicorn of its time. It's very pretty. It sounds great. There's a good amount of budget with a solid team behind it. I think it'll be probably a little better written, but like at the time, most everyone's like, "Oh yeah, unicorn's really good," up until a certain point. Um,
I
but
would
I think
contest
it's
that.
I think it is like that, and I think this is maybe the slightly more mature, like spiritual successor to the Away the Mess team with budget.
A lot more budget.
Yeah, a lot more. It like because I'm in this weird position where I'm one of the people. I don't think this is necessarily anime of the year. It's really good, and it's maybe top five, but I mean it's definitely top five. But it's one of these that it checks all the boxes. It does everything right. But this is, I think, something the mecha community is going to be like talking about for a while. But I don't know that it'll break through. Like, I don't think it's gonna like Attack on Titan or Gurren Lagann or Ava or anything like that. Like, it's for us basically, and then that's kind of the end of it. I think. Like, I'm not to the end of it, but I don't think this will be the one that's remembered for the decade. But when people get into mecha, this is one of the first they go to.
Yeah, because I know I'll
Convoluted.
be recommending this as a non-Gundam mecha anime for a while.
Yeah, I mean it's really good. Like it does everything right, pretty much. Like it's
And
there. It's really not too crazy difficult to follow either. The first portion of the first season's kind of brutal, but once people make it past that, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, okay, we're invested. This makes sense."
well, that first bit also makes you understand that the writing is taking this pretty real, and that just because you have plot armor doesn't mean you're safe.
Pretty much, yeah. Like there are several close calls. That you're like, "Oof."
There's no
Like,
Jesus Yamato in this.
yeah, no one's getting out of that. Like the strike explodes, you're dead. It's not like, oh, I happened to survive, and yeah, it's like, no, you're dead.
Yeah,
It's over.
like even at the end of that battle with the Morpho, like Shin was obviously concussed. Like he was not leaving that Regan leaf, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, there were moments in that where I was like, they're really not showing like half of his body. He's impaled, his arm's missing. There's something happening, and he was in rough shape, but he wasn't like in any danger of like about to be dead.
Well, I mean, except for the black cloud of all of those stupid. I want to say they were called levs. That's what the little butterfly ones that do the jamming are called.
Yeah, I
They're
mean, at
all
least
they're all German named things.
yeah. I feel like the whole like Gideon or Gideon Federacies definitely
Giod,
kind
man.
of Giod, whatever.
There you go.
Like it in a weird way is kind of this like weird World War I Europe situation where they're the Germans and really kind of not, but kind of they are, and like the Republic was kind of meant to be maybe like this like French equivalent, and then it kind of isn't. But I mean, it does feel like all of these things have some inspiration, and yeah, I think all the German names is probably slightly pointed to that. I also think Japanese people just like calling things German names because that's kind of a prevalent anime thing. It's like,
Because it
oh, that
sounds
sounds cool.
cool.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that looks cool. That sounds cool. Yeah, let's throw it in. It doesn't need to make sense. Just put it in there. It's
Always.
German.
More so
German
than
name.
English.
Yeah, yeah, true. Usually when English is in there, it's not because it sounds cool. It's just nice little extra add-ons to the ends of sentences or something. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a banger of a series. Like, yeah, like if you haven't watched it or you've been on the fence, I don't know why you watched this
You
far into this
should.
video, but you should go watch it. Just like we spoiled you, but it doesn't matter. It's well worth watching it. It's
And
do it.
honestly, we didn't even spoil you that much. Although, what are you still doing here?
Yeah, yeah. Like, just go watch it. Just do like you know what the ends of these sound like. Just go watch it, or maybe pause, watch it, and then come back. It's gonna
It,
take you a while, but
it's too late for that, man. Like, at this point, you may as well stick around and buckle up because we only got a few more minutes to go here.
or everyone's left already. But yeah, I mean, if you guys feel differently or think that maybe it's not anime of the year like I do, let me know. Let us know in the comments. We will look forward to speaking with all of you and hearing your ideas about the series. Um, and of course, if you don't know what 86 is, I think we probably educated you slightly enough. But if you have any questions on how the universe works or anything, we'll do our best to answer those as well. But before we end, Murdoch, you have your own channel. So what is that about?
So, on my channel, I am Mr. Murdoch86. Prefer to go by Murdoch. I primarily am a Star Trek and horror survival streamer. Not really streamer, VTuber. You may have noticed the Spicer sporting this flashy, cool uniform over here, and even the one I'm wearing. In fact, this isn't even my normal getup. My normal getup is, well, it's kind of red like the Spicers, but it's from $23.99.
Different franchise.
Different franchise universe. But yeah, when I get to come and hang out with the big boys over here at Gunpla Network, I make sure I dress for the occasion.
You're well dressed for the occasion. You picked a very good uniform for this.
And no, my hair's too bright to be Bright Noah. But you know what? I've been told my magic slap works. So if you want to become a competent pilot,
if that's what you're looking for, Murdoch's got you covered.
I'm terrible.
But those have been our thoughts on 86. Please, everyone, like and subscribe, of course. Check out Murdoch's channel and stay safe and keep on building.
Especially that last part. Make sure to keep on building.
Yeah, Bandai needs money.
Maybe.
They gotta put it into the metaverse.